I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the abduction of Nancy Guthrie, a case that is now more than a month old and has everyone wondering, are we any closer to solving the mystery? Here's the story. The break in the case didn't come from a witness. It came from technology. Nancy Guthrie disappeared from her Tucson home overnight. Authorities say evidence shows she did not leave on her own. Blood identified as hers was found at the scene. Then investigators revealed a critical twist. Home security systems and digital monitoring connected to her pacemaker were disabled during the time frame when she vanished. Surveillance footage later showed a masked person outside of her home. Ransom communications followed, though law enforcement has not confirmed their authenticity. Now the FBI is also on the case. An elderly woman with medical needs is missing, and investigators continue to race against time. Now, obviously, there's been a huge public investment in this case, in this investigation, etc. But take a moment, take a step back, and think about what it has been like for Savannah and Cameron and Annie, the children of Nancy Guthrie, waking up every day, if you can sleep at night, and mom still isn't back, and you're wondering what happened to her, why did this happen, who did it, what did she suffer? Is she suffering now? Is she alive? Is she not alive? Is this a kidnapping? Was this a murder? What? Like, you don't have any of the answers. And every day is the same. And for Savannah Guthrie, right? She's the host of the Today Show. Big time job, right? But like part of everyone's, a lot of people's, millions of Americans' mornings, right? And that's a huge part. Her family is back on the East Coast as well. And she's been out there every day, every night, waiting for an answer, and the answer has never came. I want to bring in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Cody, because I was glad to hear of this moment that Savannah did travel back, meaning that she's spending time, she's got children, she's got a husband, a family, and everything that's going on here. Plus, she was back at the Today Show, surrounded by her television family.
Yeah, Vinny, so that took place today. She was there making an off-screen visit to her colleagues at the studio back in New York. And, you know, it was reported that she was expressing all sorts of gratitude and thankfulness for the support that her colleagues have shown her and her family since this whole tragedy started. We're looking at images there that we have of her back there today with her colleagues. Obviously, emotion is just riddled across her face. But I imagine, you know, you see there that warm embrace from her colleagues, just a sense of warmth and love there among the people at the Today Show, seeing her come back. Now, another important thing about it is that she did confirm that she plans on returning to the show at some point, but there's no specific date for when she'll actually be back on the air on millions of people's TV screens in their homes across this country. Now, speaking of the Today Show, Vinny, Savannah's mother, Nancy, you know, the crux of this whole investigation here. She's appeared on the Today Show several times before with one of the most recent segments showcasing pretty much Savannah's life growing up out there in her hometown of Tucson, which is, you know, how the world found out that Nancy still lived there. Take a listen to this clip from the Today Show where Nancy and Savannah are at one of Nancy's favorite restaurants out there in the area.
What made you want to stay in Tucson and plant roots?
And so wonderful. Just the air, the quality of life is laid back and gentle. Yeah, I like to watch the javelina eat my plants.
But the best thing about Tucson is coming home and
Yes.
seeing you guys.
So clearly a close relationship there between Savannah and her mother, Nancy. Now, Vinny, I want to pivot back to, you know, we've heard a lot about these ransom letters and that initial ransom letter that the FBI was taking very seriously. That initial letter demanded $6 million in Bitcoin. That's a lot of money, whether it's in cryptocurrency or US dollars. That leaves open the question, you know, the suspect in this case, why would he have taken Nancy or demanded that much money without knowing that Nancy was Savannah's mother?
Right. Yeah, that's such a great point, Cody. Because when you're, as the host of the Today Show and the way they do the show is they're very open about their lives. And a big part of Savannah's life, obviously, is her mom. And then, just, a few months, maybe 2 months before this happened, a big profile piece on Nancy, et cetera. And then that huge demand of money. Okay. Brings us to the first question in our investigation tonight. And I think this is one we've been thinking about from the beginning anyway, right? Was Nancy Guthrie taken because she's Savannah's mom? As sick as that is, right? But like, was that the motivating factor? Is that why she was targeted? Joining me, psychiatrist, forensic specialist, and medical health expert, Dr. Yalda Safai, and private investigator Lauren Vellucci. Great to have you both here. Dr. Safai, before I get to that question, I wanted to ask you about Savannah and going back. She's been out there 30 days, more than 30 days, day in and day out, trying to live this, but she was able to go back home, be surrounded by her family, and obviously friends who are coworkers, but they're great friends as well in real life. How important do you think that is for her at this point, now that we're more than 30 days into all of this, to return to some, I'm not going to say normalcy, but some of the people that are so important to her every day of her life?
I see this with my own patients all the time. For people who have gone through some sort of trauma or traumatic event or who are going through a depressive episode, sometimes going back to work and going back to a routine is very important for their well-being and recovery. They become distracted in the everyday tasks that they have to do. So having that routine is actually sometimes healthy for your mental health. And if you're surrounded by supportive coworkers who are there to have your back, or you can emotionally rely on, that's the best case scenario. And it seems like that's what she has here. So she's incredibly lucky. And I think it's important and helpful that she's back at work, actually.
Yeah, because I could see just getting lost in all of it, and then you stop thinking about your own sanity, your own health, and it's so important. All right, Lauren, let's get to the question. Do you think that Nancy is targeted, that Nancy is taken, that they break into that home because she is Savannah's mom?
Yeah, Vinnie, from day one, I don't believe in coincidences. So you have a major celebrity who, in her own right, Ms. Guthrie was on TV multiple times. So she was, a low-key celebrity. So I absolutely do believe that there is a connection. This was always a targeted kidnapping, abduction, in my opinion. And, I just don't see it any other way.
Yeah. Dr. Safai, we see a picture of the suspect on the porch, but we don't know who he is. We don't know his background. We don't know if the ransom letters are connected or not. But if the ransom letters are connected, the motivation seems very obvious, and a connection to Savannah. But what are your thoughts about this man on the porch having any idea of what would result from breaking into that home and removing Nancy Guthrie from that home? Do you think anyone has that in their mind, that I'm about to commit a crime that the whole nation is going to know about within hours?
That man on the video doesn't look too sophisticated to me. He doesn't look like he could be the mastermind behind all of this. I think he might have been hired by somebody who knew exactly who this family was to carry out the job. They're demanding $6 million in ransom. People think just because you're on TV, you have that kind of cash lying around, which is not always the case, right? And I think if the mastermind behind this was looking for some sort of infamy or notoriety, kidnapping somebody famous who's already on TV all the time is the best way to achieve that. So I don't think this was a coincidence. I think it was orchestrated and they knew who this family was. But this specific kidnapper that we're seeing on camera, I don't think he was leading things.
Lauren, I know you've spoken a lot about the man on the porch. What are your thoughts about him and the motivation or the role that he has in all of this?
Yeah, I agree with the doctor 100%. I don't think this is a criminal mastermind that really knew the whole scheme of this operation, if I had to take a guess. I think he knew he had a job in this, and unfortunately, I think his job was getting Miss Guthrie out of the home. He didn't come prepared. Again, someone who knew potentially that there was a security system and a doorbell camera, and then goes right there to pick up flowers, shrubbery to cover the camera. That is ridiculous. So this guy, I think, played a part, but a very small part in the grand scheme of things. I wouldn't even be surprised if he didn't know the full extent of what was about to happen.
All right. Dr. Safai, I want to circle back and finish this segment up talking about Savannah again, because, I mean, big time in the news business, has been a part of American mornings for many years now. It's got her big national start here on Court TV, but obviously, whew, you know, through the roof, her career. Do you think she thinks about that? And if you were speaking with her and she's struggling with the fact that something bad may have happened to my mother because I'm a celebrity, or you know what I mean? Or I'm successful, and they may have targeted a family member. And I'm sure it's happened to other families as well. How do you help them work through it and help them understand that they did nothing wrong? They should hold zero guilt or responsibility about what happened, if they are harboring that.
It's very normal to feel that way. Usually the first thing somebody does, it starts to think of all the scenarios of how they could have done things differently and how they are to blame. I see this with victims all the time. So it's very normal. It's actually part of the process. And, you know, we don't know. Maybe if she wasn't on TV, something as tragic of like this could have still happened to her family. We don't know. But what we work in therapy with patients is to try to let go of that feeling, and it takes a long time. Sometimes they hold on to it for even years, that feeling of guilt, but it's something that's actively worked through in therapy. And I'm pretty sure at one point or another that thought has crossed Savannah's mind, unfortunately.
Yeah, and obviously there's no one to blame for this other than the people responsible, and sometimes that's difficult to understand and to grasp, because in a lot of the cases and things we talk about, the tragedies, people are like, well, if I did this, if I did that. No. The bad guys, they're the ones responsible for all of this. All right, Dr. Safai, Lauren Vellucci staying with us. Coming up next, will the reduced coverage of this case impact the suspect?
Somebody knows. And we are begging you to please come forward now.
Weeknights on Court TV.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Welcome to Closing Arguments. We have a big hour ahead here.
Your deplorable actions are unforgivable.
The community still doesn't know how this Boston police officer died.
He can't prove one element of his case.
It was a dramatic day, a dramatic moment inside the courtroom.
What's happening here?
It's unreal. Let me show you exactly what happened.
Closing Arguments with Vinnie Politan. Weeknights at 8, 7 Central. Only on Court TV.
But we need to know where she is. We need her to come home. For that reason, we are offering a family reward of up to $1 million for any information that leads us to her recovery. All of the information about this reward and the details is in the caption below. You can call the 1-800-TIP line. You can be anonymous if you want.
I am shocked that a $1 million reward did not lead to a lot of movement in this case very quickly. $1 million is a lot of money. That's game-changing. You rarely see a number like that in an unsolved case. And Savannah Guthrie and her family put that money on the table. Said, here's $1 million. Just give the information so we can recover our mom. No one came forward. Wow. Let's get back to Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Cody, this story, obviously, a big story. You were there in the beginning. It was, you know, unlike anything. We see these stories once in a while. They are rare. This was one of them. But it does seem like things are beginning to calm down a little bit now.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Vinny. And I'll tell you, those first couple weeks, though, I was there the first week, the week that she was reported missing, it was a media frenzy. I mean, there was media left and right, especially in the press conferences. And we have some images of the media frenzy. There it is right there. You see all these people yards. That's the street that Nancy lives on. They're yards down the street in either direction. I'm talking 4, 5, 6 football fields. You couldn't even find a place to park. It was just so crowded. But Vinny, you know, as time went on, of course, you know, neighbors started getting disgruntled. A little bit of the media started dropping off. I mean, you know, when we first started, there was every local outlet, every national outlet that you could imagine that was out there. I remember talking to a guy that had driven all the way over from San Francisco. Even him and his team were out there. But, you know, eventually orders came in that restricted media from parking pretty much anywhere inside the area, inside the neighborhood. You couldn't park anywhere. Now, media and journalists were still allowed to access the roads and the road in front of Nancy's house, but they would have had to got dropped off at the entrance of the neighborhood, the multiple entrances, and take a hike through the roads in that Arizona heat. So that did away with a lot of the journalists and media. You know, so it is dying down. But then we see this post from JLR Investigates on X. It's a sign in the neighborhood that says, "Please do not leave media as the Nancy abduction will go cold." So, Vinny, even though some of the media coverage, the media is pretty much not there anymore, it still seems to be some public interest, at least from people in the neighborhood out there in the Tucson area.
Yeah, would like to see it get solved, but you are so right. The numbers have come way down, and it's over the course of time. Other big stories have happened, and you also have this, like, it's not necessarily a waning interest, but you know, in the beginning, any little thing that happened became big. Now it's going to take something big to happen to get that level of coverage back. So that brings me to the next question in our investigation. And I think it's an important one in a case like this where there was so much coverage. Will the reduced coverage of the case, or how will the reduced coverage of the case impact the suspect? Still with me, psychiatrist Dr. Yalda Safai and private investigator Lauren Bellucci. Lauren, what are your thoughts there? You know, when it's, you know, the top story in every news outlet, everywhere, locally, nationally, online, on your feed, it's still there, but it's not even close to where it once was. How do you think this will impact the suspect or suspects in this case?
I think it depends on what type of person these people are that took them. It seems as though if the reporting is accurate and these are accurate kidnapping demand letters, they wanted a sense of people to be watching, right? They seeked out the media to release these. So I think it depends on basically how they are. If they want that, I feel like if these are legit, they will reach out again and kind of let that be known. But I think, you know, it's also a little relief for them as well, because they're hoping that it kind of gets forgotten in a way and the investigation hasn't gone very well. And, you know, just looking at it from an outsider's point of view. So I think that they're maybe breathing a sigh of relief. So it depends on basically the criminology aspect of things for this actual person.
Dr. Safai, what are your thoughts on how the way you know, there was this frenzy, it was the story night in and night out, and now things have kind of settled. How do you think that will impact the suspect or suspects in this case?
I agree. I think if these suspects are going after notoriety, infamy, or if they're hoping to get a big paycheck out of this, I think the dying off of the media attention could be a problem. One of two things could happen. Either they'll get tired, abandon the whole thing, and hopefully leave the victim on the side of the road unharmed, or they can get frustrated and escalate. Hopefully it's the first scenario, but if that's what they're craving, if they're craving that media frenzy and notoriety, it's going to be bad news if the media attention dies down. Now, if their motive is elsewhere or their interest lies in something else, which we haven't really discovered yet, then it's a whole nother scenario. So I think it, like my co-panelist said, it really depends on what their motives are.
Lauren, do you think there's any chance that they kind of let down their guard a little bit and maybe somehow, some way do something or reveal something sort of unintentionally because they're a little more relaxed?
Yeah, I definitely think that that is possible. It happens a lot. But ultimately, I think this crime is going to be solved with the evidence that they were able to collect. And I have absolutely no confidence in Sheriff Nanos. I just don't. So I just hope that because of the mishandling of this crime scene from day one and everything else after that, that they have enough to find this person. But yes, there's always that chance that they could get more comfortable, speak and say things that they shouldn't because of their like cocky nature of the fact of what they've done. And it's giving them that confidence because there has been nothing. They to them, it seems like they may have gotten away with this.
Excuse me, and Dr. Safai, the other part of this story is that we were talking about Savannah. Like if there becomes a moment where this thing is dying down, it can heat up very quickly through the actions of Savannah Guthrie herself, right? She could sit down, do an interview, she could hold a press conference. So I don't think this is one that the family, we deal with so many families that are worried about their unsolved cases going cold. I don't think this is one that would fit in that category necessarily for the family, at least, because I think they control part of that.
That's true. She's on television every single day. If she wants to keep the case alive, she probably can. She has a large social media following and presence, and she's always on TV. But that is a very heavy burden on her shoulders to have to bear. So I hope it doesn't come to that. But like you said, this is not just any ordinary case. This is a famous person, and she has the power to keep this case alive by doing more interviews, by drawing on from her connections in the media. So this is not an ordinary case, and hopefully it won't die down completely.
All right, Dr. Yalda Safai, Lauren Vellucci, great to have you both here. We appreciate it. Thanks so much. Still to come, how well do we think the investigation is going? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the abduction of Nancy Guthrie. Who is that man behind the mask, and how has he been able to get away with the highest profile unsolved crime in the nation? Here's the story. It started with a normal family dinner. Nancy Guthrie left her daughter's home around 9:45 p.m. and returned to her own residence close by in the Catalina foothills. Sometime overnight, something happened. By Sunday, she had vanished. Deputies declared the home a crime scene. Evidence suggests she did not leave voluntarily. Blood confirmed to be hers was located outside. Surveillance video captured a masked individual on the property during the night. The FBI joined the investigation. Ransom letters have circulated publicly but remain unverified. Savannah Guthrie, a familiar face to millions, now finds herself in a deeply personal nightmare. And the question remains, where is Nancy? Where is Nancy? That question has not been answered. And this has been a massive effort by law enforcement. If you think about the hundreds of deputies and officers and agents from the FBI, all involved in this, all working the case, working the case, working the case. Let's bring back in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. The other part of this investigation that's been kind of different is how the sheriff has been communicating with the public. Can we take a look at how all that sort of has transpired over the course of this month?
Yeah, let's walk through it because we know Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos, he's held some press conferences, he's had some one-on-one interviews with some media outlets, he's released some statements, daily statements for a while there, Vinnie. But let's take a listen to what he said on February 5th. This was 5 days after Nancy Guthrie was last seen. Take a listen.
Nobody's eliminated, but we just really don't have enough to say, this is our suspect, this is our guy, we know, or our gal. We just don't know that. And it's really kind of reckless to report that someone is a suspect when they could very well be a victim. It just, I bring to you, to the media, I plead with you to be careful of what it is we put out there, because we don't have anybody here listed as a suspect. This is a timeline that we have been able to develop with some of the things that we've had processed. Various pieces of electronics that we've gathered. Sunday morning, early morning at 1:47 a.m., the doorbell camera disconnects. At 2:12 a.m., software detects a person on a camera, but there's no video available. They had no subscription, and therefore it would rewrite itself, cut out. It just kind of leaves, right, and covers up. That's what our analysis teams have told us. We're not done with that. We'll do all we can, but that's what it says. So it detects a person on camera. Could that be an animal? I imagine that's possible. We don't know that. We just have no video. But we're not giving up on that. 2:28. Nancy's pacemaker app shows that it was a disconnect from the phone.
When you say the doorbell camera was disconnected, do you believe that camera was taken?
We do not have it in our possession. We've not located it. At 9:48 p.m., which is very consistent to what we were told by the family, that Nancy was dropped off at home, and we know that because we have a garage door open at approximately, I can't stress that enough, at approximately 9:48 p.m. At 9:50 p.m., that garage door closes. It is that time we assume that Nancy's home and probably going to bed. We know she is in need of medication, daily medication. And we also know that this is day 4 or 5, and still we don't know that she's getting her medication. That could in itself prove fatal.
So that was the initial press conference just days after Nancy Guthrie was last seen. But since then, we know the sheriff has communicated with the public through public releases and on social media. And it started with this statement they put out the next day after that press conference on February 6th. They say, quote, "The FBI and Pima County Sheriff's Department are aware of a new message regarding Nancy Guthrie. Investigators are actively inspecting the information provided in the message for its authenticity." And he's referring to a second ransom note. We've heard a lot about these ransom notes as this case has developed. Then on February 12th, some information came out on a possible suspect. They say, quote, "The suspect is described as a male approximately 5'9" to 5'10" inches tall with an average build." And of course, he's referring to the doorbell camera video guy that we've seen so much now, you know, fiddling with the camera and all of that. So after that came an important message to those who live by in the Catalina Foothills neighborhood. This says, quote, "Investigators are requesting all video footage that includes vehicles, vehicle traffic, people or pedestrians, and anything neighbors deem out of the ordinary or important to our investigation from January 1st, 2026 to February 2nd, 2026. An alert was just sent via Neighbors app to users within a 2-mile radius of Nancy Guthrie's residence near East Skyline Drive and North Campbell Avenue." And lastly, Vinnie, he wanted to let everyone know that the family was cleared. And they recently put this statement out saying, quote, "To be clear, the Guthrie family, to include all siblings and spouses, has been cleared as possible suspects in this case. The family has been nothing but cooperative and gracious and are victims in this case. To suggest otherwise is not only wrong, it is cruel. The Guthrie family are victims, plain and simple. Please, I'm begging you, the media, to honor your profession and report with some sense of compassion and professionalism." So Vinnie, relying on support from the public, he's obviously putting out that the family is cleared, but we also know, interesting fact, that Annie Guthrie, Savannah Guthrie's sister, her car is still in law enforcement possession, even though he has cleared the family. But, you know, he seems to be alluding to that as standard procedure and also alluding to the fact that they have left no stone unturned thus far.
All right. Thank you, Cody. Brings us to the next question in our investigation tonight. How well do we think this investigation is going? Joining me to help answer this question, private investigator, safety and security expert, author of Prepared, Not Scared, Bill Stanton is with us, and private investigator, founder of Victims News Online, Erica Morse is with us. And Erica, ladies first, I'll begin with you. You know, I think about this case, you know, Pima County, it's kind of a small town kind of feel to it. It's not Tucson proper, but it's kind of the outskirts. Reminds me of our analysis of two other very high-profile cases in small towns. You know, you had one out in Moscow, Idaho. We saw how that went. And then we saw one in Indiana, in Delphi, and we saw how that went. How well do you think this investigation's going?
I don't think it's going well at all. I think that they're at the point where they need to go back to day one. Because we have this vicious cycle that has occurred now. We have a sheriff who is probably outside of his league here, who probably doesn't know how to condition this level of a case, especially this high profile level of a case from day one, okay? And then you have the press trying to get more information because it is such a high profile case. And the sheriff desperately trying to control the narrative. We know the FBI is telling us that the local SO is holding back information. So that's very concerning. And now we have this increased awareness of this $1 million reward. And, you know, I did some research on this, Vinnie. BBC did a fascinating piece back in 2014. And in high-profile cases, rewards only account for up to 6% of those tips, because what ends up happening is those tip lines become inundated with people who are reward chasing. And now I think we have like 15,000 plus tips in this, and that each tip, you know, requires manpower. So I think that they need to just kind of go back to day one, start over, look fresh, and see if they've missed anything, because I think they've missed a lot.
All right, Bill Stanton, what are your thoughts? How well do we think this investigation is going?
Well, I concur with Erica. She's pretty spot on in a lot of the areas. What the folks watching need to understand, Vinny, is there's various buckets. You have the law enforcement bucket and with the local sheriff's department and the feds. Are they playing well together? You know, are they sharing accurate and timely information? You know, then you have the press. And I think it's imperative that the press stay on this for the family. The more press, the more shows like this, podcasts, etc., the more pressure it puts on, and it keeps that awareness out in the zeitgeist. And then you have the collective, you know, almost the crowdsourcing of us all trying to figure this out. And for the simple fact that it hasn't been figured out, or we haven't apprehended the perp or the perpetrators, that tells me it's, you know, going slower, and the heat on this case is going to simmer down real soon unless someone picks up the phone and gives a valid tip, or there's some breaking piece of evidence that we're unaware of.
Erica, what has surprised you the most in the way this has all played out so far?
Believe it or not, it is the lack of ground searching from volunteers. So I was thinking about this earlier, and you mentioned it, an Indiana case, Delphi, which I've worked, a West Texas rural case, small town, the Haley Dunn case back in 2010. In both of those cases, you had droves of volunteers. And I can think of hundreds of other cases where droves of volunteers show up. Law enforcement says, you take that grid, you take that grid. They take the IDs, they collaborate with these individuals. They utilize media to actually solicit volunteers to come out and search, especially on weekends. We're seeing the exact opposite, where, as we talked about the other night, Ben, United Cajun Navy, the Search Mothers of Sonora, they're being turned away. And so that really concerns me, that 6.5 to 7.5 mile radius hasn't really been covered the way they would like us to think it has.
Bill, what do you think they're searching for now? Are they searching for the suspect? Are they searching for Nancy? Are they searching for a body? What do you think what do you think ultimately they're really looking for right now?
Well, I mean, I'll say all of the above, but they're circling back around. They're maybe looking for something they may have missed. You know, Vinny, about a dozen years ago, I had a nationwide case. It was missing baby Lisa Irwin, where the baby was taken from the home. And that case is cold to this day. And every year or so, you know, we do the rounds, we talk about it, hoping that someone sees something or remembers something. And I hate to think that this case goes that route, where we're talking about this, you know, months or years down the line. I think there is a missing piece somewhere. Somebody knows something. They just might not be aware that they have that missing piece.
Yeah, I remember the baby Lisa case very well. I was always wondering about that person caught walking in the early morning hours or middle of the night on that gas station surveillance video. All right, Bill and Eric are staying with us. Coming up next, why is the task force now going door to door?
This entire team here, those behind me, and our community are hurting with you.
This is the story of the Richins. Eric, a father of 3, met an untimely end, and Corey, his widow, wrote a children's book on grief.
She's also charged now with his murder. He was faced with betrayal and terror.
I know her innocence.
Is their story a tragic romance?
Or a twisted tale of grief?
The truth will come out.
The Grief Author Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
We just really don't have enough to say, this is our suspect, this is our guy, we know, or our gal. We just don't know that. And it's really kind of reckless to report that someone is a suspect when they could very well be a victim. It just, I bring to you, to the media, I plead with you to be careful of what it is we put out there, because we don't have anybody here listed as a suspect.
Yeah, we know. No suspects, no arrests. Still looking for Nancy Guthrie. Let's get back to Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Cody, what's happening in the neighborhood? What's the latest there?
Yeah, Vinny, we got some more action in the neighborhood, and from law enforcement, I want you to take a look at these images. They were captured by JLR Investigates and posted to X. We see a still image here. Now, I know it's small, but on the back of those shirts, it says Violent Crime Task Force. We have a video of them walking there. The one shirt of the guy in the darker shirt, it had FBI in there, and his shirt actually says Violent Crime and Gang Task Force. Now, we know earlier this week, Sheriff Nano said he'd be assigning a special task force to his homicide unit to continue working this case. So maybe this has something to do with that. But Vinny, it seems like they are continuing to knock on doors in this neighborhood, maybe looking for another suspect. Here we are over a month into this investigation.
Yes, fascinating that they're back in the neighborhood, knocking on doors of Nancy's neighbors. Thanks so much, Cody. Great work tonight. That brings us to the final question in our investigation this hour. Why is the task force going door to door? Still with me, Erica Morse and Bill Stanton. Bill, what are your thoughts here? Why are they going door to door?
Well, okay, all supposition on my part. One, they need to clear the neighbors. Were all the neighbors properly interviewed? Could they be suspects? Well, we're looking far out. Could it have been right next door? Verifying the video, their doorbell ring type cameras, asking if they may have heard anything, going back on questions they may have gotten from interviewing people in the past. Just, you know, reapplying their efforts, looking to see, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, seeing if there's anything that they may have missed and need to reassess.
Erica, is this what you meant when you said go back to square one, start again, and begin like knocking on the neighbors' doors?
Absolutely, absolutely, because I'll take the flip side of that. Bill did a great job talking about, clearing all the neighbors. Now I'm going to look at it from the perspective of utilizing those neighbors as witnesses. They're looking for patterns of break-ins. Do the neighbors recall suspicious vehicles in the area in the days leading up to that? When you are standing boots on the ground at somebody's doorstep and you're having a one-on-one conversation with them, sometimes you can give recall. They'll have a recall situation where they'll go, oh, I forgot about that. Maybe I should have told law enforcement about that. Because you know what questions to ask as an investigator. And one of the questions I would be asking of every neighbor, anyone whose door I would knock on, would be whether or not they've recently had heart medication go missing. Because we are now past 30 days on a medically frail victim, and we don't have anything indicating that a pharmacy was robbed, anybody stocked up on medications prior to her disappearance. So I would be trying to find a source, an incoming source of those heart medications.
Yeah. And it's interesting, it was just last week where a new video surfaced uncovered by the media from a neighbor that was 2.5 miles away. It showed some vehicles, around a time that is consistent with the timeline here. Connected or unconnected, I don't know, hasn't been identified yet. But Bill, that gets to another thing. Like, I work in television, and sometimes you try to get, viewers, you want them to send videos in. They don't do it. But if you go out and videotape them or knock on their door, you're just more likely to get what you're looking for with that very personal interaction.
Yeah, you're 100% right. They're turning over every stone, and we don't know if these investigators, these people knocking on the doors, they may be different investigators to put a new set of eyes on it, if you will. So, they're throwing the kitchen sink at this investigation. I think, it's as it gets cooler, we have to hope for a big hot item or someone picks up the phone that notices a pattern and says something. Because as this goes further, that's what's going to break this case.
All right, we only have about 15 seconds left here, Erica. Do you think at any point the family will or should hire private investigators?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because PIs are allowed to run a parallel investigation. That's why.
All right. Big thanks. Bill Stanton, appreciate it. Erica Morse, always great to see you as well. We'll see you again soon, hopefully at some point with a conclusion to all of this. Now, from my perspective, it was really nice to see investigators back in that neighborhood. I can't imagine, as we sit here, that this case can't be solved. Think about the man behind the Walmart mask. He was literally using weeds to deal with a doorbell camera. This guy is not a genius. We don't need Elliot Ness to solve this one. I got to think the sheriff, the FBI, and the task force working together will get the family an answer soon. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.